Yeah.
I want to go back to the seventh day.
Yeah.
Does it actually say God rested, or what is the actual wording?
Let's bring the verse. Can you please pass the Torah right there?
Because why is
I have one here. I have one here.
Because Hashem didn't have to rest. I mean, why would resting is for a human being, not for
Correct.
not for God.
Correct.
So he just stopped. I don't know I forgot if it says that he rested or he finished.
Okay, so we have like this. So we have here. By the way, it's verse number 23 in chapter number 2. Okay? Vayomer Adam Zosapam, and the man said, "This time it is bone from my bone and flesh from my flesh." What's this time? So now you know the rest of the story. Okay?
After one time.
What? This shall be called woman, for from man was taken this woman. Okay? Now, what does it say earlier? Let's read this together, okay? And thus finished were the heaven and the earth, and all their hosts. God completed on the seventh day his work, which he had done, and he abstained on the seventh day from all his work, which he had done. God blessed the seventh day, and he sanctified it, because on it he abstained from all his work, which God created to make. All right? No more creating. It's all done.
He mentioned that we were not to.
What's that again? I'm sorry?
We were unallowed to work our maidservant, our manservant, our oxen, our ass, our
Right.
whatever else we had. We weren't allowed to justify the workings of others who were subordinate to us.
Right.
So it's pretty clear he wanted us to rest.
Correct. And that we see later on in Exodus. We'll see that also. Okay. So the answer to your question is that God did not create, and we said that there's the different opinions is whether or not the seventh day is a creation unto its own, or it is a new a creation unto its own, or it's just the lack of creation. Okay, and that we can discuss back in the Breakneck Through the Bible in depth Torah study. Okay, so we have like this. We have the single set of the non-kosher animals and the 7 sets of kosher animals. There was a great flood, rained 40 days. Okay, so we started with the numbers, right? So, for example, Hanukkah is 8 days, right? Some things are 8. 7 is nature. I don't want to get into it too much, okay? 8 is above nature. What's the number 40? We see a lot of things having to do with the number 40.
40 days and nights.
40 days and nights. We have the 40 years the Jewish people were in the desert. We had the 40 days of the flood here by Noah. We have the 40 sa'ah in a mikvah. A mikvah, a ritual bath, has to have a certain quantity of water, which is the 40 of a measurement. Let's say 40 liters. Okay, it's not exact, but it's 40 sa'ah, which is the biblical quantity of water. And you have 40 weeks of gestation. In Jewish law, a baby is considered living after 40 days from conception, right? So you have all of these 40s. What is 40? So our sages tell us that 40 is the number of creation. The number of creation is 40. Whenever you have number 40, it's referring to a new creation. So let's see all of those. The Jewish people left Egypt as slaves. In order for them to become a new people, they needed 40 years in the desert. It was sort of like that pregnancy, that as soon as they were done those 40 years, they got into the land of Israel.
And 40
right?
weeks is the baby.
That's correct. The baby gestation is 40 weeks, right? 40 days also makes sense. Now, why is a mikvah 40 sa'ah? It's 40 sa'ah because what happens to someone who goes to the mikvah? They go out. They go in one way. They come out another way. They go in with sin. They go in with, and they come out pure and holy, right? People who convert, right? They go in still with their non-Jewishness. They come out part of the Jewish nation. It's a total transformation. They become a new being, a new creation. And that is the 40 days and the 40 nights of the flood. 40 days and 40 nights of the flood, God says, you know what? We got to start this over again. Right? New rules. And that was the 40 days and 40 nights of the flood. That's the number 40. Okay, so it rained 40 days. 1 year it took to recede. Noach brings offerings to God as thanks for saving his family. And then we have the 7 Noahide laws. Anybody know the 7 Noahide laws? It's going to be on your notes, right? Number 1, do not eat a limb removed from a living animal. Do not curse God. Do not steal. Do not be sexually immoral. Do not murder. Set up courts and bring offenders to justice. And do not worship false gods. Right? Harley Davidson. Right, okay. So those are the 7 Noahide laws. Now, it's a very important thing for people to know. Right? A non-Jew does not need to become a Jew. No person. That's why you don't have missionaries in Judaism saying, oh, why did you convert to Judaism? You know, it's like we don't need reaffirmation. We don't need to feel comfortable in our own skin. You're perfectly fine the way you are. In fact, Judaism is the only religion that says you can believe in this, you fulfill the 7 laws of Noach, and you're good to go. Right? You don't have to take all 613. Just the 7 laws and you're good to go. Anybody. You don't have to believe in Judaism. You don't have to be in that covenant. You don't have to at all. You've got it the way you are. Live your life. It doesn't say that you can't eat McDonald's in the 7 laws, right? It doesn't say any of that, right? On the contrary, right? Non-Jews, gesund to hate, we say, right? But for Jews, there are different rules. There are different rules for Jews. Okay, but so you know, people come to a Jewish court and they say they want to convert, right? So the obvious question should be, what's wrong with you the way you are? Like, what just keep the 7 Noahide laws and you're good to go. You get a place in heaven. By the way, in Islam, all right, if you don't convert to Islam, according to their faith, you know, your jihad should be waged against you. Murder, they kill you, right? Because you don't believe in their faith. Christianity is the same thing, eternal damnation. Either accept their Lord and Savior, or it's all over. Judaism, no threat. No threat. You're perfect, stay Gentile. There's nothing to worry about. Just observe the 7 Noahide laws and you're good to go. You have a place in heaven. Right? So it's these are the 7 Noahide principles. Obviously, this is from the creator of heaven and earth, Hashem, the one and only Hashem, okay? God made a new covenant with mankind, and that was with the rainbow. The rainbow is a signature, and the reason why, specifically the rainbow, the Midrash says, is because the rainbow, there's no point of the rainbow you say, oh, I see blue, I see green, I see red. It's a perfect blend. A perfect blend one into the other. It's showing that God and creation are a blend, and they can never be separated. Just like the rainbow, the colors can't be separated either. Okay, the beginning of the 70 nations, you know, they were building the power of Babel, right? They were unified, and they traveled to the valley of Shinar to build this huge tower, this Tower of Babel against God. So God confused them with 70 languages. Imagine you're in the middle of talking to your friend, and then they start speaking a language you have no idea what they're talking about. You're like, is everything okay? We were talking English till a minute ago, and suddenly you went all French on me, right? And then the next guy's like, I don't know, it's Portuguese. Can someone translate? Nope. Total confusion. It's like, I'm out of here, right? I said, pass me the bricks. He's not passing me the bricks. I can't build my Tower of Babel, right? Total confusion, and that's where all these 70 nations are dispersed.
How long after Noah was that?
Not very long after Noah. I mean, they should have still remembered the flood. I mean, obviously, it's a few generations later, right? God confused them with 70 languages, and by the way, these 70 languages was an obligation for every member of the Sanhedrin the Jewish court, to know each of the 70 languages. Mordechai, for example, the coming holiday of Purim, which is in about almost 2 months, right? The first day in March, I believe, is Mordechai was the head of the Sanhedrin, or member of the Sanhedrin, and he had to speak all 70 languages, which is how he understood the language of Tarshish, which was the language spoken by the 2 guards at the king's palace that were plotting to kill Achashverosh. How did he speak that language? Well, he was a member of the Sanhedrin. They didn't know that, right? Now, one of the things that I mentioned this in one of the classes, that Joseph, and I'm saying this in my brother told me this, Rabbi Aryeh Wolbe, a beautiful idea that we see by Joseph. Joseph was told by Pharaoh, "Go bury your father in the land of Israel, in the land of Canaan, like you promised." Oh, like you promised. Go bury him, because that's the right thing to do. Like you promised. Because one of the other promises that Joseph made was not to reveal to anyone that the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, didn't speak all 70 languages. Because one of the qualifications to be the Pharaoh is you had to speak all 70 languages, and he did not speak one language, one of the 70, which was the holy tongue, which is Lashon HaKodesh, Hebrew, otherwise known as Hebrew. Right? He didn't know that. So Pharaoh was afraid, if I don't let him keep his promise to his father, he'll get into the habit of not keeping promises, and then potentially I'm under the bus, because he's going to reveal to the world that I don't know the language that I should know. Okay. 10 more generations passed from Noah to Abraham, and we know the story with Abraham. It's a very incredible story, right? So his father's an idol. He has an idol shop, right? But today we have, pawn shops. We have other shops, right? Gift shops, right? So he had, right? Terach, the father of Abraham, had an idol shop, and he was going to the idol convention in Vegas. So he says, if you don't mind, I know you're all from school for the weekend, for winter break. If you don't mind, can you just take care of my shop?
To the boy?
Yeah, to Abraham. Abraham, the boy at the time. And the father comes back, and all of the idols are broken to pieces. He took his baseball bat and just broke them all. The father comes back. He's like, what's going on? What happened here? I told you to watch this place. So what does Abraham tell his father? He says, you have no idea what was going on over here. He said, this God, right, this idol God, was arguing with this idol God. He says, you're not God, I'm God. And they started fighting with each other. And this place was chaos. You have no idea what was going on here. All the gods were fighting with each other, and they just broke each other to pieces, and that was it.
It sounds just like my house.
Right. So Abraham was obviously adverse to his father's thing with idols, and that came out at a very young age. Abraham, this is now from portion number 3, which is Lech Lecha, all the way till Vayechi. So we have Bereishis, Noach, Lech Lecha, Vayerech, Hayisara. You're not going to remember this by heart, maybe, right? Toldos, Vayetze, Vayishlach, Vayeshev, Miketz, Vayigash, Vayechi. You don't remember any of them. It's fine, except for Bereishis. It's fine. You will have them next week on your notes. Okay? So make sure, for those of you online who are not here at class, come get them. Right? So we have like this. The 3rd, all the way to the 12th portion in Genesis, is 286 years, 4 generations of Abraham's family. Okay? And let's hit the road. We have Abraham discovers God. Monotheism. There's one God. God calls Abraham at the age of 75. And it's very interesting. Our sages tell us that the world is divided into 3 different sections. The world will exist for 6,000 years. The first 2,000 years will be total rebellion, chaos. The second 2,000 years will be discovery of God, and the third 2,000 years will be the observance of all of that. So now you see that Abraham kicks in. He's born in year 1948 from creation of Adam. We count all of our days. 1948 from creation of Adam, right? You look that, well, it's, but what you have over there on that sheet is from before. It's after that.
1948?
Not our 1948.
Not our 1948.
1948 from creation of Adam. We count from someone else's birthday, right? Right. We count. We're currently in year 57778. Very good. We're year 5778. The
322 years to go.
That's right. We got to get work done. And what we have as well is that we have 1948 Abraham is created, which is only 52 years before the second 2,000 years begins. When does the Torah pick up on Abraham? When does the Torah pick up on Abraham? When he's 75 years old, just into the second set of 2,000 years. Okay, so God calls to Abraham at 75 years old. Abraham and Sarah travel to Egypt. Sarah is barren, and we see that all of the matriarchs were barren. Right? Why? Good people. Why do they have so much trouble?
Need to pray more.
Exactly, because God loves their prayer. God says, I want to hear them pray. It's like the candy you hold back from that child because you love the way they say please so cutely. You're like, oh, please, I'll say it again, right? Just give him his candy. No, I want to hear it again, right? God says, I want to hear that prayer, right? I'm going to give it to you, but I want to hear that prayer. So they return to the promised land. Abraham and Lot part ways. Abraham was working with Lot, and he didn't like that Lot wasn't honest. So he says, "Go! I can't deal with dishonesty." And God repeats His promise of the land that God will give the land to Abraham. Right? It's going to go to you and your descendants. Right? That God repeats it. Then the obvious question can be, well, Abraham had two children. He had Ishmael and he had Yitzchak. So maybe it's going to Ishmael. Well, the promise was repeated to Isaac and later repeated again to Jacob. It was not repeated to Ishmael. Okay? So that would tell us. Plus, Abraham didn't really consider Ishmael his full-fledged son. Right? Because it was not from his wife, it was from his concubine. Okay? So, God repeats his promise for the land. There's the war of the kings, where the 4 win the 5, right? Where we see supernatural powers, where things don't work by nature. We have God reassures Abraham, don't worry about it, I'm going to give you the land, right? We have Hagar and Ishmael, where where Abraham sends away Ishmael. God tells Abraham, listen to her voice, referring to Sarah. Listen to her voice, and she said, get rid of him, I don't like him, he's right, get him out. Now, it's very interesting, we learn a very, very big principle from Ishmael. Because Ishmael, God knew that Ishmael, the Islam, right, will become one of murder. So why keep them alive? Right? Ishmael was about to die, he was almost dead. Right? And God, right, and there was this whole argument between the angels and God. Right? Hagar, his mother, who was just sent away from Abraham, was crying on the behalf of her child that he should get some water. He's dying, right. So there's this argument between God and the angels whether or not he should give it to him. The angels say, well, why would you give it to him? He's going to be a rotten guy later. Just let him die. Right? God says, how is he right now? Right now he's righteous. What will happen in the future will happen in the future. Right now he's righteous. He deserves to have that mercy. And it goes by Asher Husham, the verse tells us, by what you are at that moment, which is why, people say, come on, who are we fooling? Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, every year we say, okay, I'm not going to do that again. Please forgive me. I'm not going to do that again. And then again, it goes right back. We go right back into our old routine. Well, God judges us how we are at that moment. At that moment, you're righteous. You're judged by how you are at that moment. Okay? So, now God makes a covenant with Abraham. Abraham makes a covenant with God. He's given a new name. It was Abram, and now it became Abraham. The letter Hey was added to his name. And Sarai also got the Hey, it became Sarah. Right? How did Abraham, how was the covenant portray? How was it the covenant realized? It was realized through the circumcision. Now, at a bris, many people think at a circumcision, people call it a ceremony, right? Circumcision is not a ceremony. It's a covenant. It's a very, very, very holy and special covenant that dates back to Abraham and the Almighty. You understand, it's the ceremony. Okay, so you can have many different types of ceremonies, and people feel like, no, this is a really special thing here. We're signing a covenant forever between this little baby boy and God, right? It's an important thing for us to notice. Judaism is not into ceremonies. We're into relationship. This is the first part of that relationship between us and God. The promise to Sarah for her offspring. That promise is given at the end of the parsha, the portion of Lech Lecha. The next portion is Vayera, right? So these three portions, Lech Lecha, Vayera, and Chayei Sarah, are the three portions that deal with the life of Abraham. And now we're going to the second portion. Abraham is tested 10 times to show, right? 10 means it's locked in, right? We have the 10 commandments. Everything that has to do with 10 is sort of like it's a firmness, right? It's solid. Abraham, 10 tests to show his total commitment to that relationship. What are the 10 tests? Abraham is exiled from his family and homeland. God tells him, Lech lecha me'aretzecha. Go, leave your family, leave your land. What did Abraham do? He didn't say, well, I have to know how to pack, right? Are we going to Cancun? Where are we going to, right? No. God says, go. He didn't ask any questions. He packs his bags and leaves, right? No questions asked. You have to leave. Now, I think it's just an important lesson for us that sometimes if we're in a bad environment, right, without preconditions, we leave. You leave, all right? Don't allow yourself to remain in a place that's compromising your own spirituality. Hunger in the land after the promise of inheritance of the land, right? God says, you're going to inherit this land. Your children and grandchildren will inherit this land. The people of Israel will inherit this land. And then there's a famine in the land, right? Thank you very much, right? That was a test, right? To see whether or not Abraham will really believe in this. We have the burning bush. We have Sarah's kidnapped. We have the war with four kings, the circumcision. Abraham is forced to go to war to save Lot. He escapes the famine after coming to Canaan. And then he's commanded to drive away Ishmael and Hagar, and then we have the binding of Isaac. So these are the 10, according, I believe, to Rashi, according to Ramban, there's a different one that exchanges, but there's still 10 trials. Abraham passes those 10 trials, which is why we have the covenant between Abraham and the Almighty. Now we see that God visited the sick. Abraham was sick. It was the third day after his circumcision, and God Himself came to visit Abraham. Right? Why did now it says that God made it. It says that Hotzi Chamim min Artika. God took the sun out of its bag, so to speak. If you imagine that there's like a protective seal around the sun so that it shouldn't be that hot, right? Because imagine if that seal wasn't there, right, we'd all be incinerated. So God took that bag off of the sun that one day. You know why? So that it should be so scorching hot that nobody would even bother traveling. So that Abraham would not be disturbed while he's recovering from his surgery, from his circumcision, from his covenant. And yet Abraham desired to be godlike in such a great way that Abraham begged for passers-by to come, and God sends him 3 angels dressed as men. Right? We're familiar with that. And there's the promise that's revealed to Abraham, right, to Sarah, that she's going to have a child, and of course she laughs, which is why the baby's name is Yitzchak, which means to laugh, right? Because she laughed that such a thing would happen. It's interesting why you would give a child. I have a child whose name is Yitzchak, right? Yitzchak Isaac, and it's like why would you name a child to laugh? right?
great name.
It is a great name.
Yes,
Of course, it's a guy. I love that kid. But the reason why is, I believe, because don't forget that laughter where you thought it was impossible. Anything is possible. It's a constant reminder. Anything is possible if God wants it to be. If God wills it, it'll happen. Even she thought she's 90 years old. It's impossible. You think about it, 90-year-old pregnant. It would be breaking news, right? ABC News, night, shocking. 90-year-old becomes pregnant. How is it? You know, it's like imagine you had a client come to you, 90 years old, and she says, "I'm pregnant."
IVF,
Right? Right? You'd say, "Yeah, I think there's a psychiatric ward next door. Right? You can go there." Right? But it's like, right? That was the promise that was given to Sarah. She laughs.
Didn't God
She said,
make her youthful at that age?
yes, absolutely. Another angel says that Sodom will be destroyed. So it was informing Abraham that Sodom was going to be destroyed. And the last was, and for him to go down and save his favorite Lot, right? And then also to heal him. Sarah is abducted. Avimelech appeases Abraham. We have then the birth of Isaac. We have Hagar and Ishmael are sent away. And then we have the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. The fifth portion, Chayei Sarah dies at the age of 127, and the verse tells us she died, right? 100 years, and 20 years, and 7 years. 127. Okay, make it short, right? Every word in the Torah is counted. Every word in the Torah, there's no letter in the Torah that's extra.
Why did they do that?
So why do they do that?
I don't know. I never-
Where's the
To
Torah?
be precise and to reduce
Because-
confusion and during translation.
So I'm asking you a question, okay? I'm asking you a question. If I tell you that in 100 days and 7 days and 3 hours, 100 days and 20 days and 7 days and 7 days is going to be Passover.
It's a month and 3 weeks.
I'm just saying, but why do I need to say
Why not
100?
127?
Just say 127.
Does it relate to the meaning of numbers?
Also, okay, very good. Pulling it. What's that?
Every Jew has a word in the Torah.
Also, ooh, great answers here. All great answers here. So listen to what Rashi says. Listen to what Rashi said. The most amazing thing. Again, we can't understand the Torah without Rashi gives us just translation almost, right? He just helps us understand the words. So it says like this. Rashi says, Lama nichtav shana b'chol klal uklal. Why does it say 100 years and 20 years and 7 years? Why does it have to say years each time? Lama l'cha shekol echad nidrash la'atzmo. To tell you that everyone is understandable in its own right. Now I'm going to read it to you here. Rashi explains that the repetition of years divided Sarah's life into 3 periods. One with its own unique, each with its own unique, and each period shared the particular characteristic of its neighbor. At 100, she was as sinless as a 20-year-old. For until the age of 20, a person does not suffer heavenly punishment. And at 20, she was as wholesome. She had the wholesome beauty of a 7-year-old who does not use cosmetics and whose beauty is natural. So what it's saying is that it's not just 127 years. Each one is representing a greatness from the numbers that precede it. When she was 100, she was as clean of sin like a 20-year-old. When she was 20, she was as beautiful like a 7-year-old. Right? To tell you the incredible quality of this woman. So I'm just, in your journey.
And what was she at 7?
What's that?
It's a baby.
7. She was pure. Right? But so you have like this. Anytime you see something in the Torah, you know there's a sign in all over New York City. Right? This is the New York City idea of fighting terrorism. Okay? Preposterous. Okay? But either way, it says, if you see something, say something. All right? You see something, say something. In Israel, if you see something, blow it up. Okay? Okay? So, So they're very pragmatic in Israel. You don't say something. You got to clear out the place. Okay. Either way, when you're studying the Torah, right? When you study Torah, when you see something, ask. Don't make assumptions. Oh, it's just the way of speech. No, you see something pointed out, ask. Ask the question. And by the way, our commentators have done such a remarkable job. Look, we have almost an entire section in our library explaining the Torah. These questions that you will have, well, why does it say 100 years and 20 years and 7 years? It's a very legitimate question. Ask it. If we're working with the premise that there's no extra letter in the Torah, then these are seemingly extra letters. Go with that perspective. There's no extra letter. Why is this written? Ask that question. You see something? Ask something. Okay? Eliezer searches, and we know that Eliezer was searching for a mate for Isaac. Rebecca's brother Laban was a swindler, right? Rebecca's kindness at the well, where Abraham tells Eliezer, he says, you'll see all of the young women at the well, right? The one who offers for you water and for your camels water, that's the person. That's the one you know. And our sages tell us the most important quality for a man to look for in a woman is kindness. The number one quality is kindness. And we see that Rachel had this, especially coming from the house of Abraham. It was increasingly important because Abraham's primary quality was kindness. Right? Rebecca's kindness at the well was seen, and that's how she was chosen. Isaac marries Rebecca, and Abraham dies at the age of 175. Now the next portion number 6 is Toldos, and that we have the life of Isaac. The life of Isaac is as follows. Rebecca is barren, again, as we said, and then she becomes pregnant, right? She has twin boys, Yaakov and Esav, these two forces, right? And this is, again, the beginning of the Jewish people. It's like we said before, we have heaven and earth. We have the spiritual versus the physical. We have Esav, who is devoted to physical pursuits, and we have Yaakov, who is devoted to spiritual pursuits. And this is the battle that we have constantly. The Jewish people will always be faced with this challenge of whether or not we're going to be committing our lives to the spiritual realm or to the physical realm. It's very, very impossible for us to be developed in both. Something has to give. Right? They don't work you can't grow spiritually if you're so immersed in physical. It pulls you down. Okay? We can get into that in our Musar classes as we have. We'll continue that at a later point. So he has twin boys, Yaakov and Esav, and it's the battle between these two worlds like we mentioned. Yaakov and Esav are very different. Esav sells his birthright for what? What is birthright? It's something spiritual. What is a bowl of soup? Physical. You see, he's ready to give up. He's ready to give up his spirituality for the physicality. Jacob gets Isaac's blessing. Esau's hatred towards Jacob is the hatred of the Gentiles towards the Jews. It started back then, and it's sort of our job to be held. It's Esau's job to hold us accountable, and that was part of the blessing that was given, or part of the comments that were given to Esau from his father, Isaac. Your job is to hold him accountable. And that's why when Jacob meets up with Esau later on, 20 years later, he meets in the field, right? They meet, right? They meet and he divides the camp. Jacob divides the camp. So what does he tell him? He says, Im Lavan Garti, I lived with Laban, right? I lived with Laban. The Taryag mitzvos shamarti, our sages say, I lived with him, meaning I observed, notwithstanding my surrounding, I still observe the Torah. Why is that relevant to the conversation? You stole my blessing. No. What was Esav's job? To hold him accountable. To what? To keep the Torah. What is he responding? I kept the Torah. Notwithstanding my surrounding, I kept the Torah. Therefore, you have no reason to hate him. And that's why Esav leaves him alone. Okay? you're good to go. And that's why in that meeting, and we'll see that soon. Rebecca tells Jacob to flee to Lavan, and the admonition of marrying a Canaanite, right? The Torah forbids us to marry a Canaanite. And Isaac is blind. We know that Isaac is blind at that time. Okay, now, I don't know if to rush through any further, or to leave this for next week. What do you say?
How many more sections do you have?
Well, we have 4 more books, but you see, we always did 5 books in 5 weeks in 6 weeks, right? But this time we don't have that flexibility, so we really have to be done. So how about this?
Go for 7. It's a good number.
Right. So how about this? We'll do 2 more portions here now, and then next week we'll finish off the last 4 portions of Genesis, and we'll get into Shmos, but we're going to have to limit questions and discussion. Plus next week we start at 8 o'clock, and then we're done as soon as you want to go. So we have the 7th portion is Vayetze, and these 2 portions are dealing with the life of Jacob. Okay, Jacob travels. Right? Why does it say that Jacob travels? We see constantly Abraham traveled, Isaac, Jacob traveled. Jews are never on vacation. You know that? The Jew is never on vacation. What does vacation mean? Stop it all. No. You're on vacation, you still have to pray. You're on vacation, you still have a relationship with God. You're on vacation, you still have to make blessings on the food. Because it's about a relationship. Right? It's not, when I'm in synagogue, then I have to pray. No, we have to pray wherever we are. Right? It's an incredible thing. You can be on the other side of the world. The blessings are still there because you have that relationship with God. Right? It's not dependent on where you are. Judaism is not a place thing. It's a relationship thing. Okay? Jacob travels. I think it's an important thing for us to know. Jewish people can travel, but we're never on vacation. Okay? Jacob has a dream. Right? What's the dream? Everyone remembers the dream with the ladder that angels are ascending and descending, right? There's a lot of primarily is that we have to take small steps. Specifically a ladder and not some UFO machine, right? Because, or whatever you call those things, right? Because, what do they call those things? Those saucers, right? And the reason why is because in Judaism we believe that growth needs to be a step-by-step process. Growth is not something that you can just jump. You can't jump. You got to take it step by step. And that's symbolized in the dream being with a ladder specifically. Right? We also talked about the stones around Jacob's head, right? How they became one is because with great spiritual power, you have greater power than the physical laws of nature. Jacob meets Rachel. Jacob contracts to marry and is deceived. Right? What does he say? He says to Rachel, you know what, I'm afraid your father's a swindler. I'm afraid that he is going to switch you with your sister. So he sets up codes. What are those codes? I don't know what they were. But she gave them to her sister. Why did she give it to her sister? Because she knew her father was indeed a swindler. And he would send Leah down the aisle instead of Rachel. Right? And then what will happen? He'll say, what are the codes? Before I say, you should be, Hareat Mikudeshesli, you should be holy to me. And he would ask the codes first. And she would not know the codes. Her sister knew it would be such a devastating embarrassment to her. Did not want to see her sister embarrassed. Now, don't forget, her father was a no goodnik, right? So the assumption that Jacob would work another 7 years for this guy, right? She didn't have such a thought. So she knew she was giving up everything. She's ready to give up her entire life just so that her sister not be embarrassed. Unbelievable. And it's in Rachel's merit that the future redemption will come to the Jewish people, I say to say. Min'i kolech mi bechi. Rachel, you don't need to cry anymore. Ki yesh sachar lepulatech. There's a tremendous reward for your actions. Vishavu banim l'gvulam. Your children will come back to the land because of your merit of not being willing to stand by when your sister's embarrassed. And you gave her the codes. Okay, it happens to be that Jacob was that righteous, he was ready to work another 7 years for her.
Why does
But
it say
still.
he worked 7 years, but the next week he married her? It's like he got her a week after he got Leah,
Right?
but then he had to work 7 more years.
Because he trusted him. They knew that Jacob was a trustworthy guy. Right? Look, if Jacob worked for you, you trust him too, you know? Right? So Leah is substituted for Rachel. And Rachel gives the codes, right? Of course, not to embarrass her sister, which is one of the greatest acts of human selflessness, right? He worked another 7 years for Rachel. He marries their concubines, Bilhah and Zilpah. They have 12 sons, 12 tribes, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zevulun of Leah, Dan, Naphtali of Bilhah, Gad and Asher of Zilpah, and Yosef and Benjamin, who is not born yet, he'll be born in a few more portions, actually next portion, of Rachel. Okay? Now, our sages do tell us that each one of the tribes was born with a twin girl. Okay?
Each one, right?
Each one was born with a twin. A female twin, yeah.
Really?
So Reuven had a female twin, okay? Now, the next portion of Vayishlach. Jacob prepares for war with military and prayer. Military and prayer. You have to have them both. Means it's good to pray for a job, but you also have to send in your resume. Right? You have to make your efforts. Jacob understood this fundamental principle. He says, I'm going to prepare myself with war, getting ready for war, and with prayer, and of course with gifts to appease his enemy. He struggles with the angel. We are in a constant struggle, and the angel will always try to hit us in the place which is most critical, which is critical to our existence, in the thigh. Right? Now it's also realistic and also metaphorical that it's trying to cut us in a way that we won't be able to survive, but we survive. Right? There were so many times where the Jewish people felt despair and they said, you know what, it's all over. We should just convert to Christianity. They're going to slaughter us at the square, whether it was in Rome or wherever else it was. Right? They were going to, right? So why don't we just give in? No. They're ready to cut you at your thigh. The Jewish people have always passed those tests. They arrive at Shechem. Dinah is abducted. Shimon and Levi decimate the entire Shechem, and Rebecca dies. Benjamin is born. Rachel dies. Isaac dies at the age of 180. Okay? Now, it's important to note a little bit about Shimon and Levi, is that if you look carefully at the verse, I may be wrong about this, but I from my very superficial overview of the verses, inadequate overview of the verses, you don't see that Jacob was upset at what they did. What you see was that Jacob was upset that they used trickery. Because Jacob was the pillar of truth, and he couldn't handle that lack of truth. Now, I know there are people out there, and I know there are people here who are thinking to themselves, really? Jacob, the pillar of truth? Jacob tricked his brother. Jacob, right? You have so many different stories. Well, we have to know that just because he was on the winning end of a negotiation doesn't mean he's not the honest one. Okay? Okay,
So that
and...
was his mother, anyway.
Well, either way, we're going to stop here tonight, but I look forward to continuing next week at 8 o'clock. 7 o'clock, Jewish history. 8 o'clock, the crash course through the Torah. With that, my friends, this concludes part 3. Next week, buckle up because we're at part 4. We're going to have to really hit the road running. So with that, my friends, have a good night. Thank you so much for joining us online. And I look forward to continuing this program. Please like and share these videos so that others can hopefully benefit from some Torah study online. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.